Welcome to another episode of Just One More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Kurt and Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justonemorefix.com or on Twitter at justonemorefix. If you like us, head over to iTunes or to Google Play and give us a rating and a comment. In this review, we're going to review Microscope. And now, it's time to get a review fix. Welcome to Just One More Fix. No announcements right now, so we're just going to jump right into this. Today we're going to take a look at Microscope, as you heard already. So Microscope is a world-building game. It was put out in 2001, it looks like, by Ben Robbins, and it is from Lame Mage Productions. We got this at, best game company ever named. Production company. So we got this at Gen Con several years ago now. It's similar to Quiet Year in some ways, in that it's just for world building, but it's much bigger scope than
it's more
Quiet Year.
free form.
Right. So the book itself is about 80 pages. It's a black cover.
Slender, one might say.
Yeah. So
You can read this today and be ready to run it tomorrow.
Yeah. So it's very streamlined, but it's very concise in what it does. There's not a lot of fluff to the book. It's very direct about
There's no
the mechanics.
Text, really, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
So in the back of it, it's got a couple of things kind of like to help you set things up and some examples and whatnot. But so, like I said, a Microscope is a world-building game, and initially when you set it up, you pick an era you want of a world you want or setting you want to detail.
It's not a world-building game in that you're creating the physical world, though. It is focused on history and kind of NPC creation. So it's more about creating storyline and events as opposed to physical world.
Right.
I mean, I think it's important to say
you're not drawing a map.
Right.
Although it's a game, it's not a game like you're thinking about. It's a game where you sit down. It's like a toolkit to create the backstory for something else.
Right.
I mean, I suppose you could play it standalone, but that's what it seems to be intended to do.
You're creating history.
Yeah.
You're creating a history.
So in the game, you pick a beginning. So this is where anything we create will start.
Of a time period.
And an ending time period. So that could, now the thing that's nice about it is that could be an epoch, like 1,000 years of an empire, or that could be 1 year of a very significant moment in a war or a time period or whatever. It's why it's called Microscope. You can zoom it in or zoom it out kind of as far as close as you want to, and it also has that same effect as you move along and create events in the game. The other thing is at the very beginning of the game, you set out some, that's what you could call them, basic rules. These are things I want to include in the world, and these are things that are not going to be in the world.
It's like must-haves and
and absolute exclusions.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you're also going to create a feel. So your beginning and end time periods are going to be defined as either light or dark, based on the general feel of that time period.
So, and then what's nice about it is when you make those exclusions as a group, when you sit down, you sit down and do that as a group. So if you don't want to have people riding dinosaurs in your world, that's what you spell out. There will be no one riding velociraptors in this game. They will only ride stegosaurus.
Okay, that's reasonable.
So, or whatever limitations you want to put on it, basically.
And you're also gonna set your general big picture. So you're gonna make a 1-sentence statement about the world that you've created. That defines it for everyone. So just let me read an example so that you know what I'm talking about. So some examples from the book: an ancient empire rises and falls, or mankind leaves the sick earth behind and spreads out to the stars.
All right.
So those, it's one generic, non-specific statement,
like a thesis statement.
Yeah, like a thesis statement that is just a general, broad statement about the history that you're creating.
Right. Then after that, you have your sort of bookends, you might call them, to your era. Right. And then after that, you go around and you can either make another, is it era? Is that the one they use? When the first card is upright?
A time period, an event, or a scene is what you're creating. And it goes in a turn order. So the person who starts off is called your lens. And they set a focus for their turn. So a specific thing within the world that they want to learn more about. Whether that is a person, like Pope John Paul, or that's an event like the Battle of the Bulge, or it's a place. I want to learn more about London. So everything that is created by the people around the table in that turn has to have something to do with whatever that focus is. It could be something leading up to or following that, but it has to be focused on that, and then that kind of goes from person to person as you go around the table.
Right, and then once the turn is up, then the focus changes. So Lacey would choose Velociraptors for her focus, and then Kurt could choose
Brachiosaurus.
Right, or whatever, or like you said, specific events. So
but I wouldn't choose ninjas.
Right. So, but you can dial in what you want to see in the world very easily.
And so, aside from that, so everybody creates another period of time that falls in between those two periods. Any number of events within a period. So you could have 4 events under a period, and you get to decide what order your falls in under that. And all of these things, just like your periods, are going to have a feel that is either light or dark. And then scenes fall specifically within events. And the thing that is different about a scene that we haven't talked about yet is that there is some role-playing that happens here, but it's almost more like an improv scene. So everybody, the person that sets up the scene, decides what characters are going to be involved and a question that is going to be answered. And then I can have as many people around the table involved in that scene as I want to. I'm going to give you your character. Everybody's character is going to come up with some preconceived ideas about that question, and then you guys are going to act out the scene to answer that question.
No, when you say improv, right, there's no mechanics, there's no dice rolling or
There's
anything
no dice
for
rolling.
who wins or loses.
If you've ever seen the show Whose Line Is It Anyway, maybe it doesn't have to be funny like that, but it's basically like, here's the characters you are, here's the scene, this is what's going on, this is the question we're trying to answer.
Yeah,
now everybody work together to figure it out.
Whatever you say is true, build off of it,
right.
leave the other people around the table a hook to kind of continue on.
So it's very open-ended.
Yeah, and it's not, well, it's important to note, it's a cooperative game, it's not competitive at all. So it's whatever you're role-playing to answer the question, not to win or lose, per se.
Right.
Like, how did the nuclear power plant melt down? And then somebody might start with, but I thought the water in the level in the reactor was high enough.
Right.
And then...
Yeah, and as you said, it's everything that is stated, as long as it falls within your original parameters of what's allowed and what's not allowed, is true. So whatever I can't unsay something James said the round before. If he said that the king was assassinated by a boy named Ted, then the king was assassinated by a boy named Ted. I can add to that.
Dang it, Teddy.
I can break it down and define those circumstances.
Right.
I can zoom out and take a look at why Ted assassinated him in the first place. Maybe he comes from an ancient line of other people named Ted that have had it out for the Empire from day one 5,000 years ago. But I can't undo that event.
Right.
And now what I thought was interesting was we used it. My first experience with this, I never read the book. I never even really heard about it. I ignored the text messages, not intentionally. But I walked into it completely blind, wanting to put together a backstory for a sci-fi game that I'm going to run. And I have to admit that it's a really neat thing because I don't have to explain anything about the back history anymore.
Right.
It's done.
Everybody has buy-in, and more importantly, they have buy-in because they themselves had input into it directly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it just pushed it. It did a very nice job of just pushing it forward. So now the first time that at least you guys sit down and we played a sport, you guys know the backstory completely. You paid attention during history class in school. You created it. I know what sorts of things that you might want to see, or some sorts of things that you at least put in there. But I will tell you what, if we had had more time that evening, we could have let it go on for 3 or 4 hours. And I would have been happy to have let it go on for 3 or 4 hours.
Well, that's the thing, too. It's nice is it packs up very easily. So the way the cards are laid out...
It's actually all of the individual periods, events, and scenes are written on index cards. And so when you pack it up, everything is stacked. All the scenes are stacked under the events, which are stacked under the periods, and then they all stack on top of each other in time order, and you have a handy little binder clip around your entire world.
Right. And then if you want to, you can get it back out and add more here and there. And you can continue to build this thing on out indefinitely, essentially.
And even if you are creating a world that you're still hashing out, you can play this game solo. So maybe you want to be forced to put a little more thought into the world you're creating. You could do this without anyone else.
Right. Actually, that's one of the things I thought it was pretty interesting about it that you could use it for, is to put a little more
structure to your writing.
Yeah, structure to your design and to the way you put your cultures and your events and stuff like that together. Because I think it shakes things up enough to where you're still using the normal creative juices that you would normally use, but you're doing it structured in a different way, so it challenges you in a different way.
I when we started doing this, I actually had sort of a weird moment because I'm like, this is a lot of how I sit down and actually write the backstories for my games. Like, this is fantastic. I don't have to write any of this now. Hold on. Let's just keep doing this. Go. Just tell me what happens next. And, it's great. I'd never, like I said, in a way, I came to a completely blank, and it really structures it in a logical fashion.
I think the rule set for this is a little better than, so like with the Quiet Year, you're doing world creation, but this lets you, at the beginning, set the general tone by making that, thesis statement. Yes. And it also lets you define the world with that initial rule set, too.
Well, the scope, too. That's important, because Quiet Year is like this settlement.
It's very specific, because this is, I feel it's more, has a much broader use, I guess you might say, as opposed to Quiet Year is very specific in what it's designed to do and where it's designed to be. You know what I mean?
Very different, too.
Yeah.
I mean, that one is more involved with like actual map building, as well as social conflict, where this is more
a higher level,
large scope, if you will.
Right. I don't think there's a whole lot more to say about it. I like it as a standalone game. I don't know that it's my thing, but as an addition to any other setting or game that you're going to play and you want to build out, I love it. I think it's great.
I would say, as a standalone game, it is very dry. But if you are a person who really loves history, maybe, and if you enjoy the improv thing, I always have kind of a difficult time jumping in a single scene as a character. So that's kind of one of my own shortcomings. So I have difficulty in acting out the individual scenes for this. So those are my kind of criticisms of it. But as far as history building goes and kind of forcing you to put more thought into your histories, I think it is very good for that.
So who is this game for then, do you think?
Okay, if you are a game master and you are constantly kind of frustrated by the fact that you don't want to bore your players to death with the backstory of the world they're going to play in.
2 hours of exposition.
I've never done that, have I?
No.
Okay, I'm like, in general. Yeah, but this right now, you can sit down and in a course of a gaming session, let's say 4 or 5 hours, you could build but you have to give over some of the control. You can build the entire backstory for the world. You could lay it out ahead of time and say, okay, I want to build the story. These are the parameters I want to do because I want it to be a fantasy or a sci-fi or whatever. And just let the players go to town. They will walk into the game on day one knowing everything about the world that you need them to know.
And you won't have to create the names of every single place, political group.
But of course, it's backloading. It's backloading or front loading the effort. So it's going to take you 4 or 5 hours. I mean, we sat down for what? How long was it? Like an hour?
Yeah, I think it was like 2 hours.
And it was pretty broad. It was pretty sketchy in the sense, not sketchy as in dodgy, but sketchy in the sense of it was very, very broad strokes. If we had 4 more hours to sit down, I feel like we really could have hashed out.
I think with 4 more hours, it would have been very detailed. Yes. It would have been a tremendous amount of
I have saved the cards in the original
stuff. I think we could come back to it easily. So right on. Who's this game not for? What do you guys think?
If you want a lot of crunch, if you want a lot of high action adventure, this is not what you are looking for.
This is a flowcharting game.
This is not it at all. This is cooperative storytelling on a historical scale.
Yeah, it's a toolkit in support of something else.
Basically, I think if you're not interested in running games, I don't think this game's for you.
Yeah, if you're a player, if you're like, I don't run games, this isn't for you. Don't buy it.
Right on. So Microscope, we like it, yes?
GMs love it.
Yes.
Right on. I like it a lot. Awesome. Microscope, check it out.
Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can find us at justonemorefix.com and follow us on Twitter at justonemorefix.